This is Taking the Lead, a podcast for B2B tech professionals, leaders, and executives who want to learn from female icons in the tech industry. In each episode, host Christina Brady interviews women who are driving revenue for some of the most respected tech companies in the world. Are you ready to get inspired?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Taking the Lead. I'm Christina Brady. I am the SVP of Sales at Speckit, and I have another wonderful guest today, Samantha DeStefano. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
It's wonderful. I cannot wait to dive in to your journey and talk all things career with you. You are currently a VP level 2 of the Enterprise at Upwork, but you had a journey to get there. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I did. So I've been at Upwork today for 6 years. And so I've had quite my journey there. Certainly we'll dig more into what that journey's looked like. But my prior journey, I started my very early sales career as an IC. And so, of course, selling into organizations, both within the staffing industry as well as in the enterprise and the healthcare space, and spent really about 10 or 11 years, almost 11 years in human capital management. And I excelled at really not spending more than 2 years in any single role. And so over the course of those, 11 years, I was taking on new challenges and new opportunities every about 1.5 to 2 years. And I'm excited today to dig into kind of how I approached that and how I still really apply a lot of those learnings and lessons today.
Oh my gosh. Well, and that's the crux of it, right? This idea of career development and what it looks like is so nuanced. There's not one playbook. So we think about the industry that we're in, the B2B technology space, and career development, depending on the stage of your company, like A, B, C, IPO, D, E, F, right? Like career development looks so different versus outside of this industry. Even folks look at the amount of movement that you see within our industry and it feels strange or rapid or too quick, but it's just kind of what we're used to. So the first thing that caught my ear there was this idea of you being able to, even within the same company, find these new roles and new opportunities for advancement. Let's dig into that a little.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It is nuanced. And of course, every organization, depending on size, also stage, is going to matter a lot. Like how well developed is their career development program? I will also tell you, though, don't be fooled just because a company might have a fully baked career development program. Career development is also super unique. It isn't one size fits all. And so although there are going to be specific things, if you're on a track and you know where you want to go, that there are skills and there's things that you should be learning and developing on to get you running for the next job. But there's also individual things and things that, of course, make you unique that you either need to work on or lean more into, right? Like there could be things that you're bringing to the table that others aren't, that makes that opportunity more for your taking. And so I think while it's important to know what the organization offers, there's a big piece of career development that does fall, in my opinion, on the individual's shoulders in what they want to contribute to their own career development and the resources they're going to tap into to get where they want to go.
I mean, that's a great point because it's something that's not focused on as much as it needs to, as teaching people how to think about their careers and career development. I find that even folks who are really young in their career, the question they're asked all the time is, where do you want to go? What is it leading to? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What's the next role that you want? I don't know that a lot of people, especially who are first entering the workforce or maybe even entering this industry for the first time, understand how to think about their career. So for you early on, how did you identify where you wanted to go? Or did you identify where you wanted to go? Or was it kind of happenstance? What did it look like for you?
Yeah, I think I wasn't always able to communicate what I wanted to do in 5 years. I think that was, earlier in my career, that was a really hard, really difficult question to answer. I don't think I would have ever answered it as where I am today had you asked me that 10 or 11 years ago. However, I do think your next immediate step was something I always had my eye on. And so I knew that my job for myself was to continue to challenge myself. That's really important. It's a motivator for me. And so I always would identify, what does the next step look like? And then how do I get super focused at becoming very proficient in what I'm doing today, while also readying myself for the next job? I think that can oftentimes be overlooked. Meaning, if we're too focused on what does the next job look like, we might be missing, how do I become super proficient in what I'm doing? How do I stand out as the best in class in whatever it is that I'm doing today that readies me for that next opportunity? And so while I always had my eye on the prize, there certainly were times where I was tapped on the shoulder to do things and asked, to step into specific roles. But I think that my preparedness around becoming proficient in my current role, as well as readying me for that next role, was part of the reason I was tapped on the shoulder to come and take on additional responsibilities or new opportunities along the way.
I mean, you tap on the idea of mastery versus advancement. Have I done everything I can in this current role and gotten everything that I need to out of it for today and also for tomorrow? And then there's outside influences too. So for you, what influenced your decision to knowing what even the very next step was? Because some people have a hard time with that, right? I think especially if we look at some of more the intro roles in the technology space, some of the BDRs or the CS reps or any associate type of role, they're in this role in this industry potentially for the very first time. And what kind of influences do they have, or did you have when you were trying to figure out, okay, the very next thing I'm going to do, here's what I want that to be?
I think it's, understanding, for me, it was understanding what was I trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And everyone has different motivators, and there's each their own. Some people are motivated by title and responsibility. Some people are motivated by compensation. Some people are just purely motivated by upward mobility and the challenge that you take on by going into new roles. And so I think that I always knew, and I think it's important to identify like what's important to me. And that might look different in the different seasons of your life too. And so depending on what you have going on within your personal life or your professional life, those two things can influence, what your next step looks like. I think understanding and being able to articulate what your motivator is and how you're going to get there has always been, really big a stand up for me. And I've done that in multiple different ways. Sometimes I was unsure too, but that's where I leveraged mentors. I leveraged peer groups. I'm a big observer. So if I didn't know what was next for me, how do I go and do ride-alongs? If I was unsure about management, can I find some leaders that I trust or that I admire and see what they'll let me come and sit alongside? I remember I very vividly rode along on team meetings. I tried to weasel my way into some one-on-ones. Like, how can I see what it really looks and feels like to be a leader from more than the viewpoint of being the person on the team, right? And so I think observing and identifying and taking that in to see like what fits with you, what motivates you, and what excites you is really important.
Ooh, how did you weasel your way into one-on-ones?
I said weasel because I don't think I went to any private one-on-ones, but any that were appropriate, like account strategy sessions, anywhere that I could get in to see how different leaders lead and what it would look and feel like. And that was super critical. It got me really excited about leadership.
It made you a better leader. Like
Yeah.
I'm so glad that we double tapped here, because so much of the experience that I have that have allowed me to excel and learn in my roles following that were the moments where I said, hey, that meeting is happening to do that thing that on paper is not a part of my job. Like nothing to do with me, but I work at this company. I'm an employee or a leader at this company. I've never done what they're talking about. Can I just sit in the meeting? Can I just listen? Can I just be there? And so many times, I would say more than almost anything, I tap back to those moments where I was like, oh, do you know how I know how to talk about how to develop comp and territories for BDR? It's because when I was a growth leader at Glassdoor, somebody allowed me to sit at the table and listen to that meeting, and then I got involved and then I learned it. Otherwise, if I just kept my blinders on and done the job that was in front of me, I would have missed out on so much knowledge.
That is so important. Like asking for what you want. That's a major point I would put out here today too. And a little bit of that is like earning the credibility to get there, right? And then how you do that is through that proficiency in your role and the things we talked about before. But I think, I've been given the feedback that in my prime years where I was really moving fast, like every year and a half to 2 years, I remember ending every skip level meeting asking for very direct feedback. Like, what feedback do you have for me? And pushing to get constructive. A lot of times on the skip levels, you'll get the good stuff, and I'm looking for the constructive. What can I be working on? And the feedback I got there was like, never stop doing that, right? Like, if you keep seeking to understand what you could be working on, and then of course the application is really important. So having really high application, getting that feedback, and then doing something about it in a way that you can showcase, I can take feedback and I can grow and I can develop on my own through the feedback that you've provided me is huge. And I think that's how you get into those rooms. I think it's how you start to identify yourself as being someone who's really eager to learn more, even if it's not within your specific silo or your specific zone, someone that's looking to expand their knowledge base. I think, by building that trust and having those types of conversations, the door is much more open for you for those types of opportunities.
Big time. And sometimes when you ask for the feedback, if you're lucky, you'll get it. And it's not always easy to hear and not always what you're expecting. Did you ever have a moment while you were moving through these roles and working your way up where you got feedback that really threw you for a loop, or maybe feedback that almost felt hurtful, or maybe feedback that you initially were like, no, that's not true. That's not me. Like, did you have that moment of like, oh, that was tough feedback?
Oh, yes. Haven't we all? Yes, I for sure had those moments. I think I definitely had those moments, and I had to come back after the feedback and had to admit that feedback was hard to hear. And maybe even in my earlier days, I might not have received it so well. Meaning, I'm sure my facial expressions gave away the way that it felt receiving it. But again, it is coming out, the person delivering the feedback to you, I asked for it. If I'm asking you for feedback, I likely trust you. I trust your opinion. I trust your oversight. I trust, what you're going to deliver to me. And so, yeah, even though feedback can be painful and force you to look in the mirror, I think it also depends on the person you're receiving it from. And, going back to that, I know it's coming from a good place, and hey, I asked for it. And so how am I going to do something with it?
Absolutely. And you talk about the idea of being tapped on the shoulder for opportunity. And to be honest, almost nothing professionally feels better than that when somebody taps you and they say, hey, I see you. I see your skill set. We have this opportunity or this position that's coming up. You're so perfect for it. And you almost want to take every single one of those because it feels so good to be seen. It feels like advancement. Maybe the pay is more, different job title. I remember early on in my career, and we're talking like 11, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
I was working as a frontline sales manager, and the company that I was at the time, I think this was Groupon years, they were just starting to build out an enablement team. And now if you remember 12, 13, you did not hear enablement a lot. And in fact, that was the first time I had heard it. So first I had to say, okay, you're building out an enablement team. That's really cool. And they said, well, the reason we're tapping you is you lean so heavily into coaching and developing your people. This seems like something that you love. We would love for you to come lead that team and build it out and build what it looks like here. And I was so flattered. And it would have been more pay, and it would have been a raise, and it also would have fundamentally changed the trajectory of my entire career. And
Wow.
I chewed on that for a long time until ultimately I said, I think I want to stay where I am. I was so young. I had no idea this was a big opportunity. And I was like, I didn't go with the tap. Now, good or bad is irrelevant. It just would have changed the trajectory of my career. And I said no to the tap. And then there was a couple of tumultuous years that came up where I was like, maybe I should have taken that tap because this is really hard. Ultimately, I think I made the right choice for me. Have you ever had a moment with all of your movement where you were tapped for an opportunity and you were like, I don't think that one is for me? And how did that go?
I don't think that I didn't take it in the beginning. The 2 times I got tapped, I took the opportunity, but there was one time where I decided after 9 months, this isn't for me. And that opportunity was, similar to what you had mentioned around enablement. This was sales training. And so I had been, in an IC role, and the goal was come in and develop an entire sales training program for our org. And I thought, this is really exciting. This sounds great to me. I went in, I built it out. I loved it. I really did like what I was doing until it was all I was doing. And I really missed the connection of customers and all the other things that come with being customer facing. And so luckily, all those deposits I had made over the years, I was able to go to the person that tapped me and said, that was great experience over a 9-month run, but I'd love to go run a team. And so while I took that opportunity, it actually got me into leadership because my experience then going from an IC to sales training into direct management was a real nice ladder there on how to move forward. And so I moved into sales leadership after that training role that I did for 9 months. I'm glad I took it. And I'm glad I went through that experience. And I'm also glad I was able to identify, hey, this isn't for me, but here's where I'm committed to the company in other areas, and was able to turn that into an opportunity.
I love that weaving path because I say it all the time on the show, everywhere. Career paths aren't linear.
Yeah.
And I actually think you hit on something where you could help a lot of folks who are maybe in a similar situation. And maybe it doesn't mean that their path is going linear and upwards, but we take these opportunities. We think they're going to be amazing, or we're trying a job for the first time. And 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, we're like, ooh, I would like to swiftly exit and yeet myself out of this role. But that's tough. And that's complicated, especially if it's really, really soon after. So for any of the folks who are listening who maybe have found themselves in a position that is new, that they are realizing is not for them, one, what do you think are the ways that you diagnose if it's a fit for you or not? And two, if you decide it's not a fit, how do you navigate that without ruining your career, which is the feel?
Right. Yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure around. I mean, you even mentioned it earlier, like career trajectory, and that people I do think it needs to fit into a box. Like if I do this, this is next, and this is next, and this is next. And I'm actually a firm believer that there's always ways to move parallel. There's always ways to move up, down, and all around, especially if you're at the right organization that affords that type of culture, right? Where you're allowed to explore other opportunities. And hopefully you have a leader who's open and willing to help you get you where you want to go, as I believe that is part of a frontline leader's job. But identifying, whether or not it's for you, I think that's pretty, I think, if you're going to work every day and enjoying what you're doing, or if you're if you have the Sunday scaries every day of the week, it's probably not something that you're enjoying doing. But how I think you get off of it, understanding that, hey, maybe this isn't for me at all, is I think that there's ways to leverage your external network, which we have not talked a lot about yet today, but was super critical, my career development. It's using your external network, it's using your internal in-company network, but there are ways to get experience and explore. I talked a little bit earlier about observation of other roles. Go explore what else is out there. If you're in sales and marketing intrigues you, find a mentor in marketing. Not just a mentor internally at your company at marketing, but find one externally as well. And the reason I think external is so important is you want someone to give it to you straight that isn't drinking the same Kool-Aid, no, shade there, but really isn't working every day at the same organization, who's going to help you see around corners and give it to you straight on what it's like to do those roles. So I think, leveraging that external, identifying someone externally as well as internally, you can gain experience and you can gain observation. You can get a good sense of, is that path, maybe it's a whole different path, but is that more fit for what I want to do and where I want to go?
Yeah. That external network combined with the opportunities internal is such a recipe for success, especially because you move into a brand new role, and whether it's a promotion within the same type of role, so like AE to SAE, or whether it's sales leader to marketing, like wherever it is, you're moving up. Well, now you're in a brand new role, either at the same company or a different company, and you have an entire set of skills, behaviors, processes that are completely foreign to you. And startup life, you don't always have that giant packet of here's exactly how you do your job, but you need to be successful right away, right? Velocity is so important. So how did you, with the amount of movement that you had within the organizations and all of these different roles, how did you identify your gaps and then be successful swimming while you're building the boat around you?
Right. How I identify gaps is I try to look at, like, even now, I know that in order to be, if I'm going to be a CRO someday, I want to get as much experience as I can working as closely as I can to marketing as well as to product. And so I knew as soon as I came as vice president, I knew right away, okay, my goal as a VP, these things will organically happen. I am working, those are two of my closest partners today. But how do I take that even one step further so that I'm deeply knowledgeable about product work streams and the cycles and how that works and how they function and run their teams very different from a sales team? How can I get even more ingrained than a typical sales partner would be around the marketing life cycle and what that looks like and where we invest our time and our money? And so I think it's identifying, for myself, like what am I not deeply knowledgeable about when I became a VP? And then how do I dive into becoming deeply knowledgeable about that? Not just for now. So it's helping me swim now. It's helping me drive proficiency now, but it's also preparing me for my next role. And so I think you could apply that to any job. That's if you're a BDR and you're looking to become an AE, how do you build a relationship with your AE where on a couple deals, like you're seeing it through full cycle? So you're not only, dropping over the opportunity, but hey, this one feel really great about. Can I see this through the negotiation, through the signature on the MSA so that you can drive that experience and get one foot ahead or one step ahead before the promotion is even here?
Oh, Sam, that last bit there was such beautiful advice. And it's beautiful because to me, that's actually more about building a culture as a company of learning, and each individual in the company, regardless of role, looking at the folks around them as opportunities to be better and not waiting for enablement to teach me how to do it and not waiting for my sales manager to tap me and promote me, but looking at my peers and the people I work with every day and what can I offer you to help you grow and advance in your career. In your opinion, is that a top-down approach? Should that be kind of the way that a company views one element of enablement?
A top-down approach meaning what? From leadership to team members?
Yeah, that leaders are open and accepting of peers guiding others through elements of training, enablement, and career development.
Oh, absolutely. I think it takes a village. Kind of what I was stating before, I don't think even the best career development programs aren't going to check every box for you. Like nothing will replace doing a ride along with a peer or with an AE. Nothing will replace, having someone you work with cross-functionally provide feedback on one of your calls. Like to me, there's only so much we can do from a programmatic standpoint, and programmatic would be the development programs, enablement, and the training. And there's a lot more that we can gain from that peer culture and that culture of feedback and the culture of growing and learning together.
100%. And when we think about growth, there's certain elements when you're growing your career where you find yourself in a position where it's so different and it's so expansive. And at least in my journey, and I'm curious to hear yours, the biggest sort of whoa, this is really different and I wasn't ready for it was the transition from frontline manager to either second line or executive leader. Like that to me, and I wasn't expecting it, felt like a completely new job. For you throughout your development, was there one or more positions where you found yourself unexpectedly realizing, holy cow, this is much bigger and broader than I thought that it was?
A little bit at every step. I think there's always the unexpected. I think in my IC track, that was a little bit more expected. I think, to your point, IC to frontline leader, that always is, I think, for everyone. Like, whoa. Okay.
So a bit of a shakeup.
Yeah. And then same thing, though. I think frontline leader to director, where you're starting to manage teams, that becomes different. And then, director to VP and so on. The world and the scale is really also where it's mostly because of scale. And then obviously your roles and responsibilities change. I think what's interesting about the last one I've had, which is just going from the size of my team. And so when I started at my current company 6 years ago, there's about 12 of us. And today, my org has a little bit over 200 people and 30 frontline leaders and 7 directors and 2 vice presidents. And so you just naturally, the way you lead starts to evolve because you're further away. You start to get further and further away from your ICs and your direct teams. And I think that was probably the piece that took a minute for me to, is how do I stay connected and how do I ensure that, I have a really strong knowledge on what's happening, day to day with the teams, while also, of course, managing the org and the division at a much different altitude. And so for me, that was probably the biggest change, was more around scale than it was job title, but sometimes one and the same.
Yeah. When you've brought like leaders, either frontline or second line leaders into your organization, and they've come from much larger orgs, what would you say are some of the areas where you see them almost trip or get like caught off guard, or where do they have the hardest time adapting to a smaller company culture?
Yeah, it's a couple of things. I would say, hopefully, when they come on board, they're aware of it isn't always plug and play at a smaller company. And that's the beauty of it. And so a lot of playbooks are still being built. A lot of things are still in test mode. And so you have to be hungry for that environment where we don't have all the answers. And so I think that's one, is ensuring that hopefully when they come on board, they're already aware of that. But around the culture is, even Upwork, we've just created our career development program, is a handful of years old, but it's not 15 years old. It's not something like Salesforce has, where it's been ingrained into our culture and our organization. You know exactly what to expect. We're still evolving. We're in phase 2, phase 3 of this will be launching. And we've just launched manager development training series. And so there is those newer phases where you're a part of the build. And so I think when you're coming from a bigger company where it's potentially more prescribed, here you get to help with the prescription as a leader, which to me is the fun part.
Speaking of the fun part of every role that you've ever been in, what's been your favorite one and why?
Ooh, for different reasons, I have different answers.
I know. Well, you can give them all. Let's hear it.
I think when I was a direct seller, that's obviously so much fun. Just, it's like the hunt, right? Like I still remember the feeling of closing those deals myself and the feeling of a happy customer. It was also a very different world. So I spent a lot of my days on the road, which at the time was super fun. I loved traveling and entertaining and spending a ton of time and building really strong relationship with my customers. So that was fun for the decade I did that. I had a ton of fun doing that. But I would say the last 6 years has been a ton of fun at Upwork. And it's been that scale journey that I've really found to be like super exciting and just really rewarding. I'd say these have been the most rewarding years of my career. And so for that, I would say these have been my favorite.
I love that. And like the reward is everything, right? We spend so much time at work, so many moments of our life doing this, and the reward, like, it has to be worth it. It has to.
A third of our life. I just read this the other day. A third of your life.
Is that the stat?
Well,
oh my God. And that includes like when we're babies, that's factored in?
I think so. So it's a
whole
third
life?
of your life at work. So I always say you better really enjoy the people that you get to solve problems with, because that's what it is. And you can go sell any product. You could have a preference on buying persona who you like to sell into, all of that. But at the end of the day, I think it's about who you do the work with and alongside. That has a lot to say, because it's a third of your life. So you better have some fun while you're doing it.
Oh, I mean, if that's not a statement to live by, I don't know what is. I mean, the people are everything, right? Companies are not a thing, right? People within the companies, they are the thing that are making it move. And I feel like this is a topic that we could drill in on for much, much longer. But it is time for us to weave into our rapid reveal section. Are you ready?
I am.
All right. So we've got 60 seconds or less to answer each question. First one, what is your latest hobby? What do you do for fun?
Ooh, my latest hobby is designing. I am no good at it, but I'm currently pretty into it.
Designing what? I'm going to break my own rule. Designing what? I have to hear more.
Just like, I've redid my office. I'm redoing my kitchen. So just really leaning into all the home designs and the fun colors and trying to bring more color into my life via my home. So that's my new hobby.
Interior design, spatial joy.
Yes.
That's a good hobby. I love it. All right. Number 2. What's an irrational fear of yours?
I don't know how irrational it is because everyone has this fear, I feel like, a lot of people. It is heights. I have to be fairly high up to feel it. And I wouldn't say that I'm like going to run away from the edge, but it gives me all the feels from like my gut to my brain and like the uneasiness of being up super high.
Yeah. I'm actually more afraid of heights where if I fell, I wouldn't die, but I would be mangled than heights. That was morbid. Do you also ever get the feeling when you look up at a really tall building where it's that same sort of like, ooh,
Same feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good one. I don't know that everybody has that fear. I feel like people, have you skydived?
I would never skydive. It's just,
yeah. See, there are people that do. There are people that are like, I love jumping.
That's true. That's true.
Great. So there you go. All right. Number 3. What is the best advice that you've ever received?
The best advice that I have ever received. Oh, gosh. There's so many. I think it's probably around authenticity. I think it's around, being yourself. If there's only one of you, and so bringing what you have to offer to the table is super critical. And I think it took me a long time to really step into that, meaning it's okay to have strong opinions, to share them. And again, I think that a lot of that, if you lean into it the right way, can get you a seat at the right tables to communicate the right things. So I think it's, especially in sales, I feel like the journey of sales is so much about who you are and like bringing yourself into your day-to-day work is super important.
Authenticity. It's a big one that we have to keep reminding ourselves of because sometimes it is hard to show up authentically. It doesn't always feel safe to do so. And so the more of us who can lift each other up and remind that it's okay and it is the way, it's beautiful advice. I know a lot of folks love Upwork. I certainly have enjoyed every moment I've been able to come and spend time with you and your teams. It's a wonderful organization and you are a wonderful person. If people want to connect to you, get to know you, or learn more about what you personally or what Upwork is up to, how do they find you?
LinkedIn, Sam DeStefano, and LinkedIn. It's the best way to connect with me. Happy to mentor, make connections. I will add on that advice piece. The other piece of advice I got a long time ago is your network is your net worth. And I think that is a great thing to follow. So happy to network with individuals as much as I can as well.
Oh, you are dropping the nuggets that count. Thank you for spending some of that third of your life here with me today. It's been wonderful. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Always huge fan, Christina. Thanks so much.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Taking the Lead. If you're looking for more inspiring stories from women leaders in B2B tech, then visit us at motionagency.io/takingthelead.